Welcome to Life Unrestricted.
This is your show if you're sick of living a life controlled by food and exercise rules, and if you're ready to learn how to accept yourself and enjoy the heck out of life. My gig is about body image, femininity, self-worth, and resilience. Come on, let's walk side by side as we slowly step out of restriction misery and unlock our true selves.
Your host, Merritt Boxler, is a former national radio DJ, freelance journalist, speaker, and writer with a passion to make women feel good in their bodies. This is a show brought to you live from Switzerland.
Hello there, lovely radical. Welcome back. How are you doing? Is all good on your side of the world? What do you say? How about we do some mind stretching together? I think I've got the right person to help us with that one today. It is Jessamyn Stanley, the woman that brings real life back to yoga. She is here with us today, and I think we're going to have a good time. And as for mental stretching, I've got some foreplay to offer. So from my side of the world, I'm doing pretty good today. But I gotta say, I had a bit of a rough time with what came up in therapy this week. And I don't want to get into all the details of the session because that would be weird. You know, boundaries are a thing. But what happened was that I felt wronged by my therapist. Or shall I say, I felt threatened by something she asked me to do. And within nanoseconds, I had my proverbial guns out and was mentally preparing to battle this out. I was completely overreacting. But at the moment when it happened, it felt absolutely justified. In my head, I was right and she was way out of line. Can you relate to that? It felt like I was reacting to what was happening in the actual situation. But as in most cases, when people flip their lid, it isn't really about what is happening in the situation. It is about something that happened a long time ago that hasn't been properly processed yet. Something that we now project onto the situation at hand without even consciously realizing it. And all the while, we think we're totally in the right. As it turned out, that was what was happening in my scenario too. No matter how much work I have already done, I was once again reacting from a very old place of hurt, not really proportional to the actual situation. And why I mention it is because, as you know by now, I often talk about self-awareness and how that's really what we need to work on to find out why we behave in certain ways, why sometimes for seemingly no reason something totally flips our lid and we shut down all reasonableness and go into self-righteous mode to prove our point and to prove to ourselves why our reaction is legitimate. So without self-awareness, we're stuck in that. And it's often a harmful cycle of over or underreacting, of going into fight, flight, freeze mode, basically, or of lashing out and creating damage that wasn't necessary at all the while thinking that we're justified to do that. So you could say self-awareness is a painful process sometimes, and I agree, it can be. It certainly took me the better part of 10 minutes to pull the self-righteous defense goggles off of my head and see how ridiculously overreactive I had been. And realizing that was not fun. Of course it wasn't. I was acting from a place of victim mentality, and that's not one I like. But I'm very grateful, again, that it happened. And that, again, I saw how much better it all felt when my walls came down and I saw the situation for what it really was. It might seem that it would have been easier for me to stay in combat mode and prove to her that I was right, but I would have missed out on the majority of the lesson and of the session, and I might potentially have hurt her. So it actually takes a lot more to really investigate what makes us react in a way, or what part of us it is that gets triggered by someone's comments or criticism, It is a lot harder to do that than to just batten down the hatches and go into Cold War mode, you know what I mean? It kind of makes me giggle now because, believe me, I have that Moscow face down to a T. I can be very credible when I'm in attack mode. And obviously, this still happens every now and then. I'm only human. And every time, because I'm practicing to become aware of what's happening inside of me, what I'm believing, and why I feel like defending myself so strongly, I found out that I was being a silly paper tiger again. Understandably, mostly, given my history, but that doesn't make it okay just to leave it uninvestigated. It is an opportunity every time. And I can assure you, it feels wonderful when you can cool down that boiling mind, at least within a reasonable amount of time, and come to your senses and evaluate the situation again, minus the ego filter. So sure, self-awareness can suck when you're applying it in the moment, but it is the best tool we'll ever have to grow in our life and to lessen the messes we create. As much as I like to be right, every so often after cooling down, I come to the conclusion that, well, I thought my reaction was totally appropriate, but I was not seeing the situation as it was. I was wearing my trauma goggles, and I reacted from a place that felt attacked. Usually when I'm able to see the whole context of the situation, and when I'm able to hear what the other person actually meant with what they said, and when I'm not in full-on combat mode anymore, I can see that it is often me who overreacts. So the self-awareness is key to get us out of the victim position. And you'll hear me yammer on about that sorry position for a while because it is important. Feeling like a victim might sound justified sometimes, but don't be mistaken. If you see yourself as a victim, you are in a position of utter powerlessness. When I see myself as a victim of terrible circumstances, which some of you might say I was, I can tell you, as long as I saw myself as a victim, I was tied and bound. Because, by definition, I was judging. By definition, I was blaming. By definition, I felt pity for myself. And by definition, I felt like the world owed me something. I was self-absorbed and expecting the world to change. I was focused on what I didn't have, and I didn't see all of what I did have, always seeing what was missing, always seeing what was wrong, always finding fault in what other people thought or did or how they behaved. We all know a person like that, right? Or, even better, we all were that person at some point. So we know all too well the negative energy that goes with being a victim. Always needing the other to do something. Always misinterpreting every word, never owning our fair share of the problem. Well, this victim mentality got me nowhere in terms of growth. Nowhere. It felt good to say that I was the one that was being wronged all the time, but it totally kept me stuck. I was powerless. And I remember how annoyed I got when at a workshop, Byron Katie told the crowd that, quote, "Victims are violent people." I'm going to repeat that. It's so juicy. Victims are violent people. Oh, I remember how annoyed I was when I heard that. I felt totally wronged. And I remember just as clearly how that quote tumbled around in my mind. And I have to say, she was right. I had been saying things like, if only I didn't have the childhood I had, or I'm just unlucky always meeting men with commitment issues, or if I had what she had, then I'd be laughing too. Or, well, if my mother hadn't been so violent and an addict, then I wouldn't have my problems, blah, 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 blah. I was expecting an outside source to fill my bucket, not acknowledging that my bucket had a hole in it and that unless I looked at what was wrong and where that hole was from and to start fixing it, no amount of approval, no looks, no money, and no partner would ever be able to fill that bucket. And no one can fill the bucket because it's my bucket. I need to start fixing it. So I need to look at the pain. And that's where most people turn away and say, no, it's easier to stay in victim position and say, he put the hole in my bucket. That doesn't get you anywhere. So with a lot of work, ongoing work, I was and am able to access some of my old pain instead of projecting it outside and being bitter and angry. And with this process has come the incredible insight that when we own our story, we can turn our darkest mess into our own and someone else's miracle. You know, I would never be as compassionate and open had I not struggled myself. I would never be able to hold space for crazy difficult emotions for other people had I not suffered through them myself. I would never be able to see the bigger picture of our collective body image struggle had I not hit rock bottom with my own quest for thinness and fitness. I would never be able to understand what my mother went through and how much she herself was hurting had I not sat with the pain in my heart. And I will continue to have to work on that because I see how much more agile it makes me mentally and psychologically to be able to question my own beliefs and my judgments. And by God, there are enough opportunities in my daily life to work on that, let me tell you. And I catch myself very often when I'm having judgmental and blamey thoughts, or when I resist certain ideas, or when all of a sudden I feel like punching someone. Usually it is my own story that messes with my rational thinking. So there's nothing wrong in having strong reactions as long as you're willing to examine, once you're able to, what was actually going on. So for now, all I want to tell you is this. You stepping out of victim mentality is the best gift you can give to yourself. It might hurt in the beginning to leave the seemingly comfortable position of entitlement, but I guarantee you, it will clear the way for you to become who you are meant to be, with all your sunny sides, with all your cloudy sides, and with all your rainy sides. It all belongs. Those are all part of the beautiful picture that is you, dear Radical. And now, before we jump into today's episode, I have a quick question. Would you consider becoming a patron of this show? It would really make my day, since, you know, in terms of sanity promoting content related to body, food, and self-acceptance, the signal to noise ratio is pretty lamentable out there. Lots and lots of weight loss, quick and dirty, false promises, instant gratification, shitty diet talking, body shaming, and downright misleading advice out there in the podcast world. And I think what we're doing here, you and I, is a work of collaboration against this diet culture BS out there. And as you know, I do give this podcast my all, and it would be nice not to go bankrupt while doing it. So if you want to show your love by pledging a contribution, please go to my support page on Patreon. You can find it at patreon.com/lifeunrestricted. That spells patreon.com/lifeunrestricted. And for those of you out there who can't or don't want to give any money at the moment, rest assured, that's fine too. We all do what we can. What I'd really appreciate though is if you could take the time and leave a nice review on iTunes. That's not so much my ego that asks you to do that, but the fact that iTunes ranks well-rated shows higher. And after all, we want more people on board with our beautiful message, don't we, Radicals? So please take the time, hop on iTunes, click on the show image, and then you'll see the tab, ratings and reviews. Choose that tab and leave a sky full of stars and a few nice words, if you would. Someone out there in the world, including myself, will be very grateful for that. Thank you. As for me, I can tell you, I'll keep on doing my best to bring my best to you. In today's episode of the Life Unrestricted podcast, as I said, we're going to talk to Jessamyn Stanley from Durham, North Carolina. Jessamyn, as many of you know, is a yogi who breaks all the stereotypes. She has built a life as an internationally recognized yoga teacher and award-winning Instagram star by combining a deep understanding for yoga with a willingness to share her personal struggles in a way that touches everyone who comes to know her. Now she brings her body-positive, emotionally uplifting approach to yoga in a book that will help every reader discover the power of yoga and how to weave it seamlessly into his or her life. It is called Everybody Yoga, and just like herself, this book breaks all the stereotypes. I had the chance to talk to her while she was at the office, so certain office noises could not be avoided, and it was a good lesson for me not to get too hung up on my inner gremlin radio perfectionist ass, saying that the audio quality must always be good or else no one will listen, which was basically the premise in all of my years as a radio host. So it was a great opportunity to deal with the echo of that, because A, it is not all in our control, and B, who cares? The interview is good, and that's the main thing. So, anyway, this is going to be a pretty deep conversation, and it's about much more than yoga. Before we started recording, Jessamyn and I talked about how our negative ideas about our bodies really only come with social programming, and that none of us are born with the idea that our body is something to be fixed. So my first question to her was if she remembers a time as a child when she felt non-self-conscious about her body.
I don't have like a distinct memory of time where I knew myself without the boundaries that society creates. That being said, I do agree with you that this is something that's embedded. It's not something that we're born with. And quite honestly, I don't even think that it's something that all human beings are embedded with. I think that this is an issue that predominantly plagues Westerners. And I think that if we can start to acknowledge the chain of command, that it's really not just magazines, it's not just individual people, it's the way that we communicate with one another, and then the way that we are filtering the information, and then the way that it gets into our children. There's no real evidence that this is like something that has always or will always happen to human beings. So I definitely think it's circumstantial of the time that we're living in now.
Yeah, and I think it's getting more and more extreme these days, especially, I mean, for probably everybody. Everybody I've talked to has told me that they suffer from this, and some, as you and me, don't even remember really a time when there was carefree, relating to our own bodies. So that's what's making me really sad, like how early we pick up on this and how deep it is to get rid of. It's not something that you can just, buy new software and then you're fine, basically. So I wonder, how was it in your household when you grew up? How did the people you grew up with relate to bodies and weight and food?
Well, I think that like most Americans, we definitely were very tuned into what was happening on the news, popular media, musicians that are popular, films, television, all of that. And I think that had a very clear impact on the way that everyone in my family sees themselves. I do think that I was in a fairly accepting environment in terms of body size. Within the African American community, it is not necessarily seen as a bad thing to be larger bodied. But that being said, within that, I was raised by a lot of very curvaceous Black women. It was not at all an unusual thing for me, but they also are plagued by body ideals just like anyone else, like whether that's upper arm fat, thighs that touch, belly size, all of these things. So, I mean, I definitely, while I was raised in an environment where my natural body shape was not something that was ridiculed, it was not an environment that was free of criticism, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. When did your self-consciousness start then?
I mean, I would say that it really began in earnest when I was in middle school. And shortly before that, when I was in elementary school, I dealt with a lot of discomfort related to my size and also related to my Blackness. This is something that doesn't really get talked about very much in our society, but we live in a very assimilationist society, and particularly when it comes to white beauty ideals. Mm-hmm. So that as a Black person with naturally kinky hair and a body shape that is generally seen within white culture as repulsive, it's very difficult to just reconcile that. And so I would say that it was like later elementary school to middle school when I really started to have a lot of difficulty with my body image.
It's very telling that we carry a lot of our wounds from that very time because we were trying to survive based on different sets of experiences, as you said. And that's why I'm interested in intersectional feminism and this sort of thing, because it only adds, the level of difficulty increases. For me, it would have been, maybe I wouldn't have survived if I would have been Black on top of everything else that happened. I literally don't know because I hung on by a thread. So it's interesting to see, how much piles on top of us when we have more discriminations to deal with, be that from our weight, be that from our race, be that from our level of abilities, our physical abilities, be that our gender. There's so many things that can literally make a person and a young person's life hell.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think that, I agree.
So was it your own personal pain that got you interested in yoga in the first place? Or was it just, like for me, it was just, I was totally brainwashed from gym culture and bought into the whole yoga, tighten your ass bullshit. So that's my first experience that I had with it. And I felt completely out of place there. So only now that I'm in recovery from, eating disorder and all sorts of different traumas, I can appreciate yoga for something entirely different. But that was never how it was marketed to me. And I'm interested in how you found your way, your non-pretentious way of being with yoga.
I mean, for me, I was not, I definitely am not the person that they market gym culture to. And so I think that was part of why that wasn't my entry point to the practice. I came to it because I was going through a period of depression, and I'm prone to depression and anxiety. So it wasn't the first time, it wasn't the last time, but I was going through some stuff, and one of my classmates, I was in graduate school at the time, she encouraged me to go to a Bikram yoga class with her. And I was really against it in the beginning because I had tried Bikram yoga when I was in high school and had an overwhelmingly negative experience. And as a result, said, I'm not doing this. It's not for me. But she wore me down. And the thing that really struck me about the practice is that you let go of the way that you see yourself, that you let go of the obsession over the future, obsessing over the past. And I mean, again, as someone who's prone to anxiety, that's one of the main causes of my anxiety is obsession over things that don't matter and thinking about the future and worrying about the past. And it gave me a space to really try to see outside of that. And I was very apprehensive about understanding spirituality through yoga because I felt that a lot of the ways that I saw spirituality represented within yoga culture were highly culturally appropriative, and they made me feel very uncomfortable. But whenever I came, and this was after practicing for years, when I came to understand that the spirituality that yoga speaks to, it transcends the way that we understand religion or the way that we understand these like monotheistic theories. That it's really about understanding that there is an energy that connects all creatures, not just human beings, but all living creatures. And that if you are a part of that exchange, if you inhale and you exhale oxygen, which is truly a cosmic energy, that you are a part of something so much larger than this like superficial materialistic universe that we are obsessed with. And for me, that internal journey of understanding the connection that I have with everything that surrounds me has been so overwhelming and so intoxicating. And that is why I found myself so attached to this practice, because I think that if it was just about exercising, I would not still be doing this, because it's kind of like, who cares? You know, I mean, like, physical exercise is amazing. It's really important. I think that it is one of the most amazing side effects of yoga, that's something that comes as a result as well, that you become more flexible, you become stronger, better circulation. That's amazing, because it is important to take care of your physical body. But I think that the obsession on the physical body is a shortcoming of our society, because it's all about surface things. You know, it's all about like what you can see is the only thing that's real. That's all that matters. But there's so much that we cannot see that is so much more important than what we can see. And yoga is the only practice that I've used with regularity in my own life to help with that. So that's kind of how I got into it. But I definitely didn't understand or feel all of this that very first class. The very first time I was definitely like, I don't know what's cool about this, but it's making me feel better, so I'll just keep doing it.
I get you.
Yeah.
And I think gym culture really ruins the idea of yoga for many out there. It can't be just you and me. I mean, I didn't go back for about 10 years because when I was there, all I saw was thin white women with hardly any clothes on, all muscles and tight butts. And I felt like, even, you know, as a white person myself, mind you, completely weird, terminally awkward, and all the rhetoric about burning your food and the tightening your butt sort of thing. I completely missed the whole idea of yoga. I just thought this is another way of calling exercise a fancy, now popular Eastern name. And the people that I knew that practiced yoga were also very, aesthetic people who were very precise, you know, the Swiss mentality also maybe valuing exertion and rational. And now I have a completely different experience with yoga, and now I like it, but I am sort of sad because when I see videos or, you know, regular yoga people on Instagram or super whatever Insta famous people there are out there, what I see is just the experience that I had like more than 10 years ago that I think is missing the point.
Yeah. I mean, I think I don't really get upset by modern yoga culture, but it's only because I have finally gotten to a place of thinking that that's a trend. Just like Taibo or just like Jane Fonda or Richard Simmons or these people who have created fitness empires in the past. Yeah. This will be gone one day too in that same way. And honestly, I don't really feel like this obsession with, you know, leggings and beach handstands and coconut water and, you know, having the best mat and all this. Like, I just don't really see that will continue to be something that really lasts in popularity, because it doesn't have any connection to what yoga actually is. And it doesn't have anything to do with looking within yourself to see the light and the dark. It doesn't have anything to do with trying to have a better connection with the other living creatures about you. It's just about things that don't matter. And so, but it is frustrating whenever you think that a lot of people who are really famous on social media are affecting and communicating with millions of people, so that millions of people are getting the impression that this is what yoga is, that it's an obsession with your body and it's an obsession with purchasing things and with having, it's all about materialism. I always get to this place of thinking that that's their yoga. That's the process then. That the practice is not about, you know, having everyone understand it perfectly all the time. It's a practice, and that this is a part of that process, and that I think the most important thing that I can do as a practitioner is to just live my practice and not focus on what other people are doing and not focus on modern yoga culture. And if it seems like modern yoga culture is sketchy, then don't go down that road. And if there's energy that can be spent on obsessing over that, that's energy that should be spent looking within myself. Because otherwise I feel like you can just walk down this road of like being pissed all the time or irritated, because you're totally right. I mean, like, that is the gym culture that you were subjected to. I mean, it's very interesting to see it all play out though.
And what I really like about you and the whole message is that you don't seem to be out for the likes, even though you are getting them, of course. But from how I perceive you, I'd say you're a rather private person that is doing what we're all doing, trying to figure this shit out, living and trying to come home to yourself and owning your shit also. I mean, I see so many spiritual bypassers, the holier than thou, I'm so spiritual crowd that often practices yoga. But for me, I don't know. I don't buy it because I know now about all the darker parts inside of myself and how I am running from them continuously and how hard it is to face all the demons. But as I see you or perceive you, I like that you don't seem to be out for the likes, and that's why I'm happy that you could write this book, because we need this point of view, especially this point of view. So what I'm wondering though is, how do you feel about this whole Insta fame?
Well, I think that the thing for me is that I don't really feel like anything has ever changed. Like, in my mind, nothing has changed from when I was, working 2 jobs and pushing things out of the one corner of my room to take pictures, and because my motivation has not changed. The whole thing has always just been that I am trying to live my yoga practice. Other people have determined that they would like to look at the place where I log aspects of my practice, which it's becoming less and less about asana, because for me, the kind of fetishizing of yoga asana, of the poses, is part of the problem within the modern yoga world. And so within my own online presence, that's probably the thing that I've noticed that has shifted over time, is that I talk less about and show my asana practice less, because I don't think that it's healthy for people to, if I can influence other people, if there are other people looking at this, I don't want for them to think that yoga is about obsessively practicing asana, because that's not what it is. But I do feel like, with that one exception, my motivations haven't changed. It's still just like, I'm just documenting my practice. When I talk about things on there, it's based on stuff that is going on in my life or thoughts that I have that I just want to kind of work out. And to me, the obsession that people have with likes and followership speaks to an absence of love and attention in day-to-day life. Because otherwise, why do you need for people to like a photo? Why do you need for someone to... It's always weird to me that so many people are looking at my social accounts, because I just don't... I kind of shoot from the hip. I just say whatever is on my mind all the time, even if it's going to be offensive to people. And I've had a number of times where I've said things where it's offended a lot of people. And I get, in addition to losing thousands upon thousands of followers, there are people who will message me both publicly and privately and be like, I don't think that this is a good idea for you to be sharing because it's offensive to so-and-so. And I just don't think, I think blah, 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 blah. And I'm always thinking, like, that's awesome. If you feel all of these things, you should get an Instagram account where you can put everything that you think. Right. But this is my Instagram account. And if you don't like it, then you don't have to look at it.
Right.
Because I think just kind of speaks to how I feel about the whole concept of quote fame, is that it's not something that I have sought. It's also not really something that I think is actually happening. Like, to me, it feels very niche, because like, if I'm famous, then someone should tell my landlord and like Duke Energy and the internet people and all these, like, tell the people who are asking me for money that I'm famous, and then maybe something will be different. But I'm still just living my practice every day.
Yeah.
Just trying to show up for my loved ones, trying to not be an asshole to like random people. That's all I can do.
Yeah, and showing up in the world means we're not perfect. So why I think it's important to talk about this is because, you know, I think it's really dangerous, especially for young people, to believe that having X amounts of followers or likes on the internet will ever fill a void inside. Because I fell into this trap myself, not on the internet though, but on national radio, and I can only repeat what others have said before me, but I had to find out the hard way too that low self-esteem cannot be cured by fame. I mean, for me, what ended up happening is that I had to put on a mask to present to the world what was thought that the world wants me to be. You know, as a radio personality, you get certain things you should say and you must not say. And that's why I swear a lot on this podcast, because I'm fed up with being told what I have to do. And I really lost myself, you know, because I was adored for something that I wasn't. And then I was feeling confused about who am I then? When I present something that I'm not, then people seem to come in droves, and they come with love and hate. So I started to see that people are perceiving me the way they see me, not the way I am. And you could ask 100 people and they would give you a different answer about who I am. Same with Jessamyn Stanley. There's someone who's looking at your Instagram account, 100 people will give you 100 different answers. And we're not preparing people, especially young people, for that. And they end up feeling lost and alone and confused and maybe isolating and feeling ashamed or putting on even more masks, you know, to make up for whatever they think. And that's such a losing game. That's why I'm always happy to talk about it, because it seems so tempting, you know, just be loved by the world. And then why does this feel so shitty, you know?
Yeah, I think that it comes from... we all just have a desire to be loved. We want to be loved and we want to be heard. And that's it. And I think that we all just find different methods to get that result. And for many of us, it is frightening to do the real work that needs to be done, to really look within ourselves for the love, because we're never going to be able to find the love that we're looking for in other people. That's why fame doesn't equal love, because it's like you can have 1 million people tell you that they love you, and as soon as one person says that they don't, it completely invalidates that one.
The whole thing breaks down.
And I feel like there are so many people, both people who have never had a camera in their face and people who literally every moment of their life is documented for others. There are so many of us who are just struggling with that basic thing, you know, and that it's like then we look for the love in other things. We look for it in drugs. We look for it in gambling. We look for it in shopping. We look for it in work. We look for it in children. We look for it in partners. Exactly. Like there's so many different places to look, but truly the love that we always seek is always within ourselves. And it never goes anywhere. And it's there from birth. And it's what connects us to all other creatures. And we close ourselves off to it because we live in a world that does not respect that kind of internal space. And I feel like this is really what kind of sets the conversation about yoga apart, is that whenever you really get down to it, it's just about this internal searching. But whenever people are like, yeah, what pose is your favorite? Or, you know, what sequence will be good if I want to be more flexible or whatever? It's like, that's awesome.
Surface.
Yeah, it's like not saying that that's not awesome. Being flexible is amazing. But that conversation is so small compared to the real fortification that can happen whenever you are seeking a truly authentic and genuine connection with yourself.
Mm-hmm. I think, you know, as you said, go look inside or go look within. It's just not something that sells so well, you know? So we're being distracted all the time. Look here, it's in fitness. Look, it's over here, it's in the new gadget. Look over here, it's in the drink. Look over here, it's in the shopping bag.
Well, and that's it exactly, too, is that I feel like the real issue is that because everything that we see on television, in movies, They are trying to sell things. That's it. They're trying to make money. They're trying to sell things. And you're never going to get anyone to buy anything if you say you are enough. You have everything that you need within yourself. Yeah. That's not a good marketing strategy.
Right.
It's so much better to say, you're not enough. You need more. You need different. Here's how you can get it. And I feel like we have to stop. The only way to really solve this, and honestly, not only do I think that it doesn't really need to be solved, but I also just don't think it can be. But the only way that it could be is if we get to a place where we're not paying attention to the media, or that the media is not of human scale for how we should show up. Because until we do that, there's no reason to even try. And I feel like the way to do it is on an individual basis. Because there's no situation where we all go to the heads of industry, whatever it would even mean to do this. You go to the heads of industry and you say, no, you have to show more diversity. You have to do this, blah, blah, blah. What is
Hello, Weight Watchers. Stop buying this bullshit, please.
Exactly. Yeah, Weight Watchers, you don't deserve to get billions of dollars every year. Here's what you should be doing. This is not going to happen. The only thing that can be done is that we each individually take responsibility for the way that these systems have worked on us, try to do the necessary damage control within ourselves so that we can move forward, and then reflect that experience onto other people. And that's it. Because ultimately, you go in this world alone, you leave it alone, all that you can worry about is yourself. But by helping yourself, by truly helping yourself, you can help so many. There's so much that can be done. I think that's really the key.
Yeah, but it hurts. That's the path that also hurts. I mean, I was in talk therapy for years before at a Byron Katie School for the Work retreat. I really had earth-shattering experiences, but I had to go through terrible emotions. But I felt something entirely different after that. And I immediately realized that the world really does react differently to me now because something has shifted inside me. And before that, I think part of me was holding on to a victim mentality, going, the world owes me, or I've been wronged, or this person is at fault, or that is at fault. And now I see that I can only clean up my own shit, which I'm sometimes reluctant to do, of course, but I can only do this. But when I do, the world shifts with me. Slowly and on a micro level, of course. I mean, this sounds really big, but it is only happening on that level. But we are not being told this because it really does hurt. I mean, I don't know about you, but crying is not something that I used to do up until a couple of 3 or 4 years ago, really.
Yeah, no, totally. I mean, I've never really been that big on emoting, and I've always been the kind of person that will look for a scapegoat before looking at myself and really accepting responsibility. And accepting responsibility is really hard, and it's ugly, and it's painful. It's all around unpleasant, but it's the only thing that is even worth doing, truly. Because what good does it do to stand in shit and then complain about how you're standing in shit? You just got to get out of it. You can't stand around just waiting for yourself to magically,
Yeah, no. And nowadays, you just said it with media and the internet and everything. I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 days ago it was when I was talking to my friend, we observed how addicted everybody is to their screens, and even in restaurants, people sitting at the same table and everybody's looking at the screen. And it's bothering me because it makes me lonely to even see that. And people pass me on the street, they don't even look me in the eyes anymore. And to me, I feel a pain in that. And so we came up with the idea that we should just shut down social media for 2 weeks, maybe for a summer holiday or something. Have a spring break or summer break or something. Not to, knock on social media, because there are many upsides to it. As you know, as I know, having my group, we can support each other on social media. It's great. But still, to have a break, that would be so great, because people are addicted to it, and it would be so like a dream scenario to snap us all awake time and time again, and to see where life actually happens. You know, the tree in front of you, the dog, the dog on your lap, the person next to you, for fuck's sake, even if it's someone that gets on your nerves. You know what I mean?
No, I totally agree. I mean, I hold a lot of deep resentment for social media because I think that it is really negatively affecting our society overall. I think there are amazing benefits. I mean, just on a really small level, the fact that like we're able to communicate with people that we wouldn't communicate with otherwise. Like I've met and been connected with so many people that it were not for social media, that would never have happened. Right. People on the other side of the planet. And then also social media can be used in a way to protect communities and to create connection and to make ways to communicate in very difficult and dangerous circumstances. And for that reason, I think it's amazing. Yes, it is. But in general, I think that it's really frightening that we're walking so quickly toward a society where people don't even look at each other. You know, they don't even, and I mean, I've seen it happen in ways where it is truly frightening. Like when I go to conventions, for example, like VidCon or BeautyCon, where it's tons of social media influencers across all different platforms. And the first thing that people ask you when they meet you is, what's your social handle? And then you say the social handle, and then they want to know about your followership. And those are the only things that matter. And then they're not even having a conversation with you after that point, especially young people, because a lot of YouTube famous people are like in high school. So they are, you know, sitting there with like millions upon millions of followers, and they are just looking through their phone at your social platform as representative of who you are as a person. So have you watched the show Dark Mirror? I think that's what it's called, or Black Mirror. It's basically like the Twilight Zone, except specifically with the digital world. So they give you like all of these different scenarios about what the world could look like. And they did this one episode where it was like all people could see whenever you look at someone, right next to their eyes, you see all of their stats. Like it's like, this is how many people follow you. This is your star rating. This is your name. And you don't look at the person. You just look at their rating. What? And that's literally what's happening. When I watched that episode, I was like, so that's what's already happening. And it's like, it's scary. I mean, the idea that, because having your phone in your hand all the time, that's the step before having the phone implanted into your hand. Yes. That's the step before being a robot. And I think it's something that we should be extremely wary of. And I do think it would be cool if there was like at least an hour every day where you like, I don't know that it would need to be mandated, because this is that's a sort of another problem.
Thing, yeah, right.
But exactly. Yeah, but like if it was, generally considered a good thing, like a siesta, you take an hour, you're not on your phone, you're not on your computer, you go for a walk, you have a real conversation. Again, even if it's with someone that you don't want to have a conversation with, that doesn't mean that it's not a worthwhile experience. And putting yourself into life so that you can remember what it means to feel and to smell and to hear and to be, not to project an image of something, which is really all that we do through social media.
Maybe we have an advantage because we remember a time when there was no cell phone. Exactly. So for me, it's completely normal to leave my phone at home for half the day and then just, sorry, I'm not here. Yeah. It's not, I don't feel obliged to answer to everything. I have all the notifications off because they drive me crazy. And, I'm suffering from depression and anxiety and all sorts of stuff as well. So why would I drive myself even more crazy? Because there's always something to see and to read, but it's not ever anything that I would miss had I not seen it. But exactly. The walk that I took in the forest today, I would miss it. Yeah, exactly. It lures me in too. In the mornings I find myself scrolling around and I have to sort of pull myself out. But then as soon as the phone is away, I'm like, what was I doing on there for? There was nothing there really. My thumb was moving along some screen and I was looking at the same spot for an hour. That's weird, but young people don't really get this. Is this education? I don't really know. They grow up glued to the screen. And I'm like screaming it to the world, hello, if we keep going at this rate, people will fall with even more mental health issues. It will all rise. We will all be severely lonely, severely disconnected, wearing masks, not knowing what we are supposed to even be. And it worries me too. You know, I mean, I'm coming from this, not from the yoga perspective, but I appreciate having the opportunity to talk to you about this. And you seem to be on the same page, because I see people are not living anymore. And when I was a kid, I was in the forest all the time. We were building tree houses, and I was sleeping underneath trees in the forest, in the Girl Scouts, and I know how to build a fire. You know what I mean?
No, I know exactly what you mean. And I do think that it comes from actually knowing that nostalgia is like, how could it be that this is something that you would not experience, you know? So I have two trains of thought, but they kind of end up in the same place. But the basis of it is that when I think about how my parents felt whenever I was young, they couldn't understand, you know, that we would want to play video games instead of go outside. Like, they couldn't understand that. And then I can only imagine that my grandparents didn't understand how my parents would, like, want to hang out and do things, you know, as opposed to, like, just being outside, because it's such a benefit to be outside. You don't have to work, you know, like, you get to just go to school and be out, you know. So I feel like every generation has their iteration of, I can't believe that this thing is, this is thing.
True,
I do think that we're looking at a particularly catastrophic kind of trajectory, that it is, we're getting to a place where it's like, oh shit, it's not just that, you know, the kids don't go outside as much anymore. That this is like, no, you don't have a connection to your own humanity. Like, that's problematic. But then at the same time, I just keep getting to a place, and this is really the yoga. It's very much of like, well, I guess that's what happens then. You know, it makes sense that that's how humans would evolve. It makes sense that this is the kind of conundrum that would come up for us. Again, with personal responsibility, I feel like as long as you can feel good in your own actions and in your own presence, then that's all that you can really be concerned about, because ultimately it's just going to be what it's going to be. And the only thing that you'll be, if you get too worked up about it, is pissed and not living in the moment, and not enjoying the hike and the fresh air and the genuine conversations. So it's there's this whole thing in the whole basis of the Bhagavad Gita is this question of, should I prevent war or should I be a part of war? If the war is inevitable, like, what do I do? And the response is, you can't worry about it. The response is like, I mean, it's just going to be what it's going to be. That's basically the Bhagavad Gita in a nutshell. It's going to be what it's going to be. That if you settle into that and accepting that is the way that it is, then it's kind of comforting. It's like, okay, well then what can I do to feel okay with what, you know? So I feel like, yes, it is really, really depressing to see where we are evolving as a society.
And one thing you said was, what really matters is to be comfortable in your own presence. Yet that's the very thing that drives many of those addictive behaviors, you know, because deep down, we may be presenting a perfect self, or we're trying to, but deep down, why would we do that? If we were comfortable in our own presence, we wouldn't try so hard. We wouldn't be out for the likes. We would just be here minding our own business and appreciating the diversity this nature has to offer.
Exactly. Because there's so much to appreciate, and there's so much to really like focus on. And I think that that's why mindfulness is both so simple and complicated, is that it's like, it's literally just understanding and sinking into the fact that in this moment, just this moment, there is so much to appreciate and so much to enjoy and so much to fill you up. And the pursuit of other things and the pursuit of more is really just greed and ego. It's not anything more than that. But like that is so hard to really get down to, because that is literally the opposite of what all of us are taught to believe about our lives.
That's why so many people, I think, have to hit rock bottom or reach some sort of breaking point or struggle with something so bad that they become humble enough, I would say.
Absolutely. Totally. And, I mean, and myself included in that number, for sure.
Yeah, me too.
Like,
totally.
It's definitely like, I don't see how I would have. And it's funny because a lot of people think that in order to be, kind of accepting of these kinds of esoteric thought, that you have to be a particularly open-minded or like the kind of person who can sit still and all of this. And I'm like, you do know that the people who practice meditation and mindfulness and yoga are usually addicts and people who are in recovery from something, or
because they have a monkey mind as well.
Exactly.
Yes. That's so great, because some of them also present themselves, in a way that, again, as the advertisement industry makes us believe that if some mostly self-proclaimed spiritual teacher tells you like how quiet they are and then how peaceful it all is, and I think it's ridiculous because it's just not true, and I don't buy into this whole Deepak Chopra narrative, wearing diamonds and then telling everybody. It's just not, it doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel true to me. It doesn't feel authentic. I don't know. It's making them tons of money, but it doesn't really help.
Exactly. It's so funny because like it always just, no matter which way you slice it, no matter how you go, it always turns into, it's about money, like always. Money. And it's funny, I'm really not that familiar with Deepak Chopra. But
I'm not either, but I don't buy it, the whole...
No, exactly.
Tony Robbins, all those people.
Totally. I could not agree with you more.
Like, we do not stink when we shit, When you do as we say, you won't stink when you shit. And it's like, no, I get bored with it also, but it pains me to see how many people are following and investing thousands of dollars to get that high that you get when you go to a retreat, and then they become retreat junkies, and that's going to be the only place where they find peace. It's sad. No. And I'm not knocking on anyone to do that, because if there's peace, fine. But I'm really questioning the authenticity of it all.
I love the way you said that. You're like, I really question it.
Yeah. I don't know. Because then I don't buy the whole namaste. When someone explained it to me, what namaste meant, I figured, whoa. Then like 90% of the times that I heard namaste from somebody, it didn't feel right. Because, you know what I mean?
I've always understood namaste to mean that, like, it's basically like saying the spirit within me honors the spirit within you. It's on the same line of like, I grew up in a very religious family, and so I grew up a Baha'i, and one thing that you say in greeting to other Baha'is is Allahu Akbar, and Allahu Akbar is basically like, it's along the same lines as Hallelujah. It's basically like glory to God. And that is the same concept as I honor the spirit within you, the spirit within me. And so to me, it's like understanding or feeling a connection with all of those lines. I've always felt like, oh yeah, no, that's fine. But I also know that there are so many people in the yoga world who don't know shit about anything that they're talking about. And so they will literally just be like, oh, mala beads looks great. Let's do that. Ooh, okay. This Hindu god, yeah, that looks great. Let's get that picture. This chanting, that sounds fun. Let's do that. And they literally just kind of piecemeal whatever. And I feel like I can absolutely see how there would be people walking around just saying namaste because they assume it means something nice, but they have no idea about the context.
Yeah, those are usually the people that have the most expensive gear on them, like the best yoga mat and the best blocks and the best straps, and everything is perfect. And I'm like, I don't have all that. But I was a makeshift person all my life, so I can use, as you said, I can use a fucking cookie box if I need a block. And that's why I loved your book so much, because it's like, let's not use any bullshit stuff we don't need. Everyone can do as they can. And let's just do the best we can with what we have, which is basically life. Let's all acknowledge that we all do as best as we can almost all the time.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it really is just about just show up with what you got, being who you are. And that's all you need to do. Anything more than that is like you trying to overcompensate. Like when I see girls in class and they're all wearing like the same outfit, or they're bragging about their clothes, or bragging about their mat, or like just anything related to that all I see is the same girls when I was in middle school and high school who were so self-conscious, and they all wanted to have the same clothes, and they all wanted to do the same, like, make sure that all of your stuff matches because you're just trying to fit in. Mm-hmm. So they're just dealing with damage in the same way that anyone else is dealing with damage. I think the trick is to not let the damages get mixed up so that you end up saddling even more damage because of a desire to be like them, because it's like, it's so easy. And I think that one of the most common, this is why I talked about it in Everybody Yoga, one of the most common things that people come in and ask questions about is like, what kind of clothes should I wear to yoga? What kind of mat should I have? Yeah, like all the time. And frequently that's whenever they're saying like, how do I start practicing yoga? They're really asking like, what supplies do I need? What should I buy to start practicing yoga? Yeah. And it's interesting because it's like, that is so not the point. None of that is the point. And I'm also not saying that like, oh, don't like never spend money on anything. Like I have more yoga leggings than any human being could ever conceivably need. I have like 8 yoga mats. I have tons of props and stuff. Like I get it. I just want to say for the record that most of those things were sent to me. I did not spend money on all these things. But that aside, I totally understand the desire to have fun stuff because it's fun. Like but not only is it not necessary, but it's also something that as practitioners we should be trying to walk away from. Like you should be trying to walk away from the need for possessions, because what is that if not just like an expression of self-consciousness to have things to show off? So I think that it's hard to ignore
the whole consumer culture also.
Exactly. I mean, I just think that it's hard to ignore the opinions of other people, but that is the most important thing in order to not be distracted by them.
Yeah, and it's also very important to not be distracted by the whole narrative about how looks are basically what counts. And I see a lot of with the Western yoga stuff, it seems to be all about the looks and the precision and the beauty and basically how do I look? Am I doing this right? How does it look? Is it okay? Do I look okay? Am I doing this as the person in front of me does it? And the only time, and ever since I've gone to yoga once a week, is sort of very slow yoga, and it is a sort of recovery yoga. So it was the first time that I really came across the real idea behind yoga, because all the people there were, and I'm saying this in air quotes, were as broken as I was, and there was no pretense. We were all wearing the oldest sweatpants we have. We just showed up, and tears were allowed. There was no talk about how we were supposed to look, or there was nothing of all that. So it was completely different, and for some people feelings came up, but it was all okay. And then for the first time I felt grounded after the class. For the first time I felt yoga can make a difference. But especially in eating disorder recovery, it's so hard, to get people off the idea that yoga needs to be hard and needs to be hot yoga. It needs to, how many calories can I burn with this? How many, it's all looks related. So I really love your message about it's not about how it looks, it's about how it feels. And if you can elaborate on that, I'd gladly have you run with it.
I mean, I think that kind of sums it up. It's we live in a society where everyone is obsessed with how they look, and more specifically, trying to look in a way where it will be pleasing to white men. That is the beauty ideal that we go with. It's like what white cisgender heterosexual men want to have sex with, and if you don't look like that, or if you're not trying to be them, then your opinion does not matter. And the reality is that their opinions are in the minority. And I'm not saying that they don't matter, but I'm saying that they don't have to matter to everyone. And it's much more important that we all focus on how we individually feel so that we can get to a place of self-acceptance. Because when you get to self-acceptance, or at least are actively working on it every day, which I would never claim to have gotten to a place where I always feel perfect and everything's amazing and I've figured it all out. This is a moment by moment journey. But when you're on that journey, you can actually be engaged in your own life so that you can be of service to others and so that you can really do things as opposed to just like sitting around waiting for life to happen to you. And I think that there are a lot of people who live their lives and wait, and they want to be palatable to everyone and be accepted. And that kind of pursuit just does not feel worthwhile to me. I mean, within a yoga practice, yes, it's important to think about how you feel rather than how you look, because how you look doesn't really tell you that much about how, even if we're just talking about yoga poses, it doesn't really tell you that much about it. If we are just like, oh, I got to make sure that the way that my poses look match up with the person next to me, or they match up with the teacher, that's, kind of not that important. The most important thing is that you feel that you can really tap into what's going on with your muscles and your bones and your joints and your ligaments, and that you can actually start to have a deeper connection with yourself that isn't just based on whether or not you're sexually attractive to other people. And it's just so small. It's such a small part of who we are. Never mind the fact that as you become more comfortable with yourself and as you step into a state of self-acceptance, you will be palatable to everyone, because all human beings are really attracted to is confidence. That's all it ever comes down to. And there's so many people, I see girls all the time who have achieved the look of, what is popular. They have the hair, they have the face, they have made their bodies, shaped it into that perfect, whatever is being considered perfect at that time. And they're miserable. And it's because they have not actually gotten to a place of finding any kind of acceptance of themselves. They're not in tune with themselves at all. All they're doing is looking to other people for happiness. And you're never going to get that.
Yeah, it's a desperate attempt to find some sort of identity in something other than being just you. As we said before, it's a narrative that is being sold to us on a daily basis. Just as with the whole narrative about do this or look like this or eat that and be happy, have that, buy that, whatever it is, and be happy. It's completely missing the point. Life is hard. Life will throw curveballs at even the most beautiful, rich people, and even the richest people that I know are the most miserable ones. And the ones that are trying to look skinny or beautiful or young all the time are the people that are the most miserable, because they are completely taken and obsessed with their quest, to hold on to this identity. And the whole life is basically missed out on. And so I can only encourage always and always, again, myself as well, to just stay me. Everybody else is taken. And there's...
Exactly.
We're all truth seekers. And I'm very suspicious of people who tell me that they found it and that they have a way to sell it to me. Because you cannot put a price on anything like this. It's a constant quest. It's a constant returning to the mat, as you probably would say. It's a metaphor for life.
Exactly. I mean, it's something that really does extend beyond our physical bodies, and it goes into every kind of interaction that we have, and speaking in truth and living in truth, and getting to a place where you don't question your own motivation, that you move from instinct. And that's really tapping into your humanity. The humans are meant to move that way. But we're encumbered by a need to be just like everyone else. And that is, I think, probably the impediment of sight. being able to see what other people look like so that we then compare ourselves with other people. It is hard work. Like, I feel like, we talk about it and it sounds like, yes, this is so great. Let's just, change the world. And then everyone's like, yeah, but what am I supposed to do today? Like, how do I start doing this? And I feel like really the key is to just kind of look within yourself in a really compassionate and honest way and see the moments where you falter, see the moments where you allow the opinions of other people to seep in, and just try to do better the next time. Don't obsess over stuff that already happened. Mm-hmm. Don't get so caught up in it that you can't find good within yourself.
And I
just try to. Oh no, yeah. Go ahead, please.
I like how you openly also speak about, emotions, and that those are normal things. It's not that if you are doing something right, you are happy all the time. Mm-hmm. That's not even the goal. It's just a narrative that is successfully being marketed, but it's misleading.
So very misleading. And I just think that all of the people who market this image, they know that it's not real. It's just up to us to know it too.
Yeah, I really appreciated the way I heard you say it, that oftentimes these days you come on the mat and then you cry. And I'm like, wow, thank you for saying that, because it still feels weird to me when I'm just faced with my own sadness and thinking, is this a bad sign? Is there something wrong? And all the time keep reminding myself it's not wrong at all. I'm a human being.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very interesting because I think that in the same way that sweat comes up while you're practicing, that tears come up in the same way. That you're in the same way that sweat is a release, tears are a release. And I was definitely raised in the kind of environment where it was not acceptable to cry all the time. Mm-hmm. And so I got to a place where I felt like, I would even compliment myself for not crying at points. Yeah, and pride myself on crying really infrequently. And that kind of behavior is really dangerous because it means that when you do, I'm liable to cry about totally random things, like you cry about, you see a commercial and then you're just completely lost to tears because there's no crying happening usually. So that now, whenever I practice yoga, and I feel myself coming into a really visibly emotional place, I just try to let it happen and just go with it so that I can release it. Yeah. Because obviously it's something that I need to release, that I'm holding on to. I need to unburden. And then once I unburden, I inevitably feel better. But that doesn't mean that the process is pretty. The process is usually pretty messy.
What's the emotion you have most difficulty with?
Love is my hardest emotion, specifically understanding that I'm worthy of love, that I deserve, that I kind of show up and originate from a place of love. And I find myself coming into conflict with that constantly, particularly in meditation.
So that trance of unworthiness that we all get lost in, is it particularly hard to accept love from the outside? I'm totally relating to that. I'm just lost in thought right now. How does this show up? Because it does show up all the time, especially, with the negative voice in our head that is, spewing their vitriol at the inside of our head constantly. Yeah. I don't know. What I recently found out is that I have a hard time with joy sometimes because it feels really good, but it feels as if I'm in danger, as if the other shoe is going to drop.
Totally.
So I'm not really comfortable with joy, even though I would say on the surface level, I would say, I want more joy, I want more love. And when that stuff shows up, I'm like, it's slightly uncomfortable, as if something bad will happen.
Mm-hmm. No, I absolutely experienced that as well. That it's very much like, okay, well, this can't really be what I think it is, that there must be something bad that's going to happen. Mm-hmm.
Well, how do you deal with it?
I just try to just sit in that emotion. It's definitely not something that I found a resolution to. And I don't even really expect to find a resolution to it. I just think that the most important thing is to be conscious of it and to just let it be. Let it be. Don't obsess over how to change it. Just let it be.
I think self-awareness, as always, is key. You know, you don't have to not ever have jealous thoughts or not ever, I don't know what, the negative impulses that we have. It's not about not having them. It's not about not having negative feelings, but it's about knowing yourself. Like, oh, that's this impulse. Yeah, that's part of me. Fair enough. And then it usually passes much more quickly than if I'm trying to, no, that's not me. That's not me. I want to be the best person in the world. So that's why I was talking about owning my shit has been the best path that I've been on. And it's also the hardest.
Absolutely.
Because I can't blame the whole world, and that would be really easy.
Exactly. If only.
So let me know the misconceptions about yoga out there that you would like my audience to know.
I mean, I think that basically everything that you see about yoga in the media is wrong. The idea that only slender white women are supposed to practice or will be the best, the idea that you get good at practicing yoga is a fallacy. Like, you just kind of are always practicing. Everyone's always coming from a beginner place. It's not something that you should really be seeking to like I'm going to be the best at yoga. That's not a thing. You don't have to have specific mats. You don't have to look a certain way. You don't have to have certain clothing. All you have to do is be able to show up and breathe. And if you can do that, then you can do this practice.
Being in your own presence.
Yeah.
And do you know why, or is it maybe just Switzerland? Yoga is so expensive. I can only afford the community recovery yoga class I go to on Sunday because it's a community class. But in Zurich, yoga is ridiculously expensive.
Yeah, yoga is really expensive all over the world, and that is part of the problem. Again, with how I think that that's part of the kind of trend of it, is that it has to be expensive so that it can make money. And I think that that's part of why my home yoga practice became so strong, is because I could not afford to practice in studios. And I do think that there should be more flex pricing or free classes or pay what you can classes or anything to make it as accessible as possible. But I think that whenever you're dealing with an oversaturated market where there are so many yoga studios and teachers, and there are so many people who are specifically using this to make money, it would be ridiculous to think that that is going to change, that there's going to be like an across-the-board shift, like in the pricing. But I think the most important thing is for teachers to really start to understand that this is not just something that can be your financial career. It's something that you are really bound to give as an act of service to other human beings, that you really are like, that you're making space for people to see within themselves. That's not something that needs to really be monetized. And that as you are building whatever kind of financial nest that you need to survive, because that's understandable. To live in this world, you need money. But even with that, there are ways to make accessible options for other people, whether it's teaching one free class a week, whether it's like going out and doing outreach classes in places where they need yoga, particularly. I don't know if this is an issue in Switzerland, but we have a very large number of people in America who are homeless or are incarcerated. And there's so many people who are really stricken by life circumstances who really need this practice. And anything that we can do to make it more accessible to them is crucial, because that's actually serving others. And the practice is a service. So I think that kind of rerouting the mindset is kind of crucial for any kind of change. But otherwise, I don't really see how it will change, because I think that there are way too many people who see this as a business and nothing more.
Yes. There obviously is a lot of money to be made by all the fancy studios and everything. So with the life as it is now that you have, how do you deal with that? All the attention, and I don't know if you feel heard or seen by the world or the media, especially, or if it is hard to deal with. I would suppose you get a lot of criticism as well, or haters even.
The criticism and haters are not really a concern for me. I feel like anyone who has the time to say something mean about me on the internet is wasting their life, because why do you even have time to, like, when I see mean comments, I'm like, why do you have time to write that? I don't even have time to read it, because people who troll on the internet are sad and lonely. So like, that's not an issue. But I do have a lot of difficulty dealing with all that has come from the work that I do, because it's very egotistical work and very, that is a lot for me to deal with. And it's the way that I've been able to kind of move forward is to keep my life as small and normal as possible, that I still I show up on my mat for myself. If I'm not teaching a class, if I'm not like working, if I'm not like leading a discussion or giving a talk or something like that, then I am at my house or in the hotel room practicing yoga and sleeping, and that is it. I don't just go out around random people. I don't spend a lot of time making new friends. It's amazing to be able to connect with so many new people, but it's a lot of human interaction. And it is not something that I'm personally very well equipped to deal with. Mm-hmm. And so the only way that I'm able to really maneuver on a day-to-day basis is to just stay in a little emotional bubble, because otherwise I think it would be very, yeah.
Interesting how the very thing that got you, quote, famous is now also the thing that helps you to, keep your head level.
I think it's very helpful that I've never been, like, I don't practice yoga for Instagram. I practice yoga because it's the medicine that has helped me to survive. And it's the same reason that I started with. And it's the same reason that will motivate me whenever inevitably people are not paying attention to me and I'm able to move on with my life in a different way, is I will just continue to come back to this practice. Mm-hmm. And I think that anyone can project their personal opinions or ideals onto me. That has nothing to do with what I'm actually doing on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah. Is there anything you have to say about body positivity and people who feel self-conscious about their bodies in relation or not in relation to yoga?
I think that body positivity is the antidote to body negativity, which is something that has come up in our society and that is a real product of the world that we're living in right now. And I think that if you can get to a place where you are looking only for your own satisfaction and only for your own setting the rules for yourself, this is not just a yoga thing, this is about all facets of life. That is how you get to a place of being body positive. I don't think it really has a lot to do with, it's good to be fat, or Black people deserve to be seen too, or any, it's not about one specific group. It's about understanding that all human beings are unique because we're meant to be unique. And that you should celebrate the things that make you different as opposed to trying to change those things to look like someone else.
Oh, beautiful. Before I ask you my last question, I want to let everyone know where they can connect with you or find out about you and your wonderful book, Everybody Yoga.
Yeah, you can find everything about me, including my local and international, national teaching schedules, my online classes, and my book, Everybody Yoga, and all of my social media platforms. They can all be found on JessamynStanley.com.
My last question to you is, what would you like to be remembered for?
I don't really want to be remembered. That's not really important to me.
I never had it. Yeah, that's an interesting.
No, I mean, I think that the need to be remembered comes from an inability to accept what's happening in this exact moment. And I think that we're always remembered by the people that we were close to. And so I guess if I wanted to be remembered for anything by those people, it would be as a person who loved and spoke authentically and who could find a way to be happy in this moment, and someone who had a smile at times. I don't know. I don't even know about that part. I don't think it's important to be remembered.
Thank you, Jessamyn, for doing this.
Thank you. It was a pleasure, Merritt. And I'll look forward to listening when it's out. And I appreciate the opportunity to chat with you.
This was today's dose of badassery from Life Unrestricted. Find the show notes with links to everything we mentioned in this episode over at lifeunrestricted.org. And if this show is making you feel good, awesome. Make sure to subscribe and please let others feel good too. By leaving a 5-star review on iTunes, you'll help make this show more visible and therefore more accessible for others. You're the best. Thanks.